Okay, so let's have a look at these boats. At first sight, these look fiendishly complicated, but this is an exercise in simplification and identifying areas of value, large areas of value, painting those, and then going back in subsequent layers and putting in bits of detail. And I hope you'll see that you don't actually have to put in that much detail in order for it to actually read like a boat with all the boat gubbins that goes on. So let's have a quick analysis of the photo before we start. I've done a pencil sketch which is not particularly detailed. I've just roughly put in areas. I haven't put in all the masts and all that stuff, but it has the main things. But let's have a look at the photo and see what we can break this down into. Now, we have the sky, we have the sand, we have the sea. That's fairly straightforward. We have the hulls of the boats, and this one is white. It has some shadow over here, but that's quite a light value, so we'll treat that as a light value. This one has got this kind of beige colour, and then the red here and some shadow, so we'll treat that as another shape. We have the railings, which I think we'll treat as a single shape. And here, even though there's some shadow on here, we'll just have a single wash, make this into a single shape to begin with, and then come in and put the shadows on there. We have the cabins with the windows. Again, this is shadow here, this is light, but we'll paint this initially in a single value, and then wait for it to dry, and then come back in and put the shadows on. Similarly for the cabin over here. We don't need to worry about the dark windows. We can just paint through those, because we can go back in with the darks and get those later. And then this bit in here, now this bit is fairly dark, so to begin with we're just going to basically wash over the whole area in a fairly mid value colour. Maybe just leave this some little shapes for the sky poking through. And here again we've got shadow and light. We'll paint the whole area this light green, wait for it to dry and go back in. And then right at the end we'll put in the masts and the little flags and the buoys and the shadows, etc. So where shall we start? We're going to leave this white to begin with, I think. So I think let's start over this side on this boat. So let's start, we'll forget about all this stuff up here. We can put that in one shot at the end. But let's start with this boat. I'm just getting a bit of tape out. So I can stick my photo up where I can see it. There we go. Now, let's have a look. Let's have a look here. We've got this lifebelt here and the top, which is that nice bright orangey red. So let's put that in. And let's just going to do a stripe of colour all the way across. And it's a fairly bright colour. I chose this picture because it is full of bright colours. Let's get a bit of scrap for some swatches. Right, it's got to be fairly strong but not too dark. A bit more colour, a bit more pigment for that. And there's not going to be a lot of mixing in this painting. These colours are going to be used almost straight from the tube. Right, now this is a first wash, so I'm just going to put a stripe all the way across, and maybe just that ellipse for the lifebelt, and I'm going to leave it like that for now, and then we'll come back in later and put in some detail. Okay, now the cabin part. In the photo this looks quite a bright orange. I think I'm gonna use some burnt sienna, but that might be a bit too brown. Maybe some cadmium orange in there. That's going to be a bit too bright, I think. A bit more, yeah. Or you can use a bit of, instead of the cadmium orange, use your yellow and your orangey red to make up an orange in there. And now, we're not going to worry about the shadows. Let me just bring this down so I can show you what I'm doing. We are going to leave a little bit of light where the sky is poking through the windows, but apart from that, we're just going to paint round the whole thing. Got to be careful here because we don't want to paint through that. Now that's, and it will look flat because we're not putting in any darks right now. Now this window's got a bit of blue poking through. This is a dark window, so I'm just going to go straight through that one. And there's this box here, which I'm sure has a technical name that I have no idea what it is. So let's paint through. And you can see these two values are pretty similar, and they are pretty similar on the light side anyway. And where's my box? Okay, this goes down here. This goes across here. And you can paint through anything that's darker because we can go back in afterwards and paint in darks. Okay, that looks kind of scrappy. And it's going to look a bit like a kid's colouring book for a while because we're not putting any shadows in whatsoever. Okay. Let's do this bit here now. We have to be careful because we want to paint it the light value. So we're not looking at this bit, we're looking at this grey colour up here. And I'm just going to get my colour isolator out just to check what value. Yeah, it's slightly lighter than a mid value. So we don't want to make it too light, we want to give it some body. But we don't want to make it too light. And this is a grey, so I'm going to use my ultramarine and a bit of burnt sienna, and it's kind of a brownish grey, so a bit more burnt sienna than you think you might need. Alright, I'm just going to test that. Yeah, just a tip more water, just a tip. Right, and this I guess gonna paint in the whole area of this piece. No detail. These are just blocks of colour going in. And there's this box here which is pretty much the same colour. And that goes in. And this piece underneath, I'm also going to colour that. These struts I'm going to leave until the end and put in with some opaque white. I think it's going to be too much hassle to try and paint around those. Okay, so should we try putting some down? I think I was thinking about trying to put in this white hull, but I think we should leave that for now. I'm just going to put in a bit of colour, use the same colour for this. I presume is that some kind of light? And again, just put in the rough outline of the shape with no detail. There's this little bit over here which I'll put in. I won't put any of the long lines just yet. Okay, right. Now let's move over to here. I think we might put in this hull over here. I want to put in the slightly darker hull before we work on the lights, just so I don't trick myself in making the lights too light, or lights too dark rather. Now we're going to ignore all the detail again. So we need a nice beige colour for there. So I'm going to use some yellow ochre. It's going to be too yellow, so I'm just going to put in a little bit of black, which should take the punch out of the ochre. Make it into a beige. No, it's not enough. It's going to be too dark. A bit more water. Yeah, just a smidgen more. Yeah, I want it to contrast with what's over here, or contrast, at least be different. Okay, so let's put in this colour here. Being careful with the side of this white hull, because we don't want to. Now this is dark in here, so I'm actually just going to go through. There's this piece up here. I have no idea what any of this stuff is, which I think actually is, when you're trying to simplify, is actually an advantage. I'm just going to paint through to the end of the boat, like so, and also this piece down here, which is the same colour. Okay, just looking for other little pieces that might be of a similar colour. There's this up here. I'm going to put this in. I'm going outside the lines basically. I can still see my pencil lines underneath, but there's that ladder there, which I know is a different colour, but I'm going to put it in. Okay. Alright, now that is blue, so I've got to remember to keep that. Okay. Now, this cabin here, we've got the same kind of roof, so let's do the same thing over here. And this is, don't try and make it look three-dimensional. We're not doing anything three-dimensional at this point. We're just simplifying it down into shapes, ignoring all the detail, and putting down blocks of colour. Okay, now this over here. Being careful when there is an edge that you know will remain sort of on the outsides, take a bit more care over it. Okay, now the cabin walls. Now this is a white. We could make them grey. If I put this over here, they probably are a grey, yeah. And there's quite a mid-grey actually. I'm going to cheat a little bit because it's white. I'm going to push those shadows to be blue. So I'm going to use a bit of cerulean in my grey that was left over. And there's bright sunlight over here, but then it goes all into shadow over this side. And I don't need, there's no sky poking through, so I don't need to leave any sky holes. But okay, so it comes across. And then actually goes around underneath that little huge buoy there. Right, okay. Wow. What else shall we do? This green piece. I'm looking for the big blocks of colour just to put in. And as you can see, everything we've done is basically the same value. There's slight variations. There's nothing that's very light, and there's nothing that's very dark. So this is dark here. Can't quite see that. There we go. There we go. This is dark, but I'm not going to put it in dark. And it's slightly brownish. Okay, so I'm going to use some burnt sienna and a little bit of ultramarine just to grey that down a bit. Now, a quick look to see if we've got anything that's very light. I think I've painted over that already. This piece here, these, okay, but pretty much nothing else. Actually, I said I was going to do the green thing and then I changed my mind. I apologise for that. Right, and leave that piece there because that's sky. Just paint, these are sticks coming down and the little flags on, and this is going to be very dark, but I'll put a wash of our mid colour on there. They're dark. So I'm washing this piece back here. It looks like there's a lot of detail in there, but we won't actually have to paint a lot of detail. I'm just washing over everything in this value that's this value or darker. And when we come back in and do all the darks, it will bring out the detail. Alright, now let's do the green. This green, quite a pale green, isn't it? Okay, so let's try, this is my lemon yellow. Let's try some cobalt. No, far too much cobalt. Come on. Okay, I'm going to go with that. I'm not being as accurate as we usually are with colour. We are using a lot of bright colours. I don't think we're not going for subtlety in colour in this painting. Right, and it's just a green box. I'm even letting it bleed a little bit into the pieces underneath. Okay, wow. Still looks terrible, but that's fine. Ah, hull of this boat. Right, let's clean up this green. It's a very bright red. It's almost, I think I'm going to use basically, if you have cadmium red, this is vermilion. A straight cadmium red, maybe with a little bit of lemon yellow would be a good alternative. And then just a single wash. Trying to get nice crisp strokes. This is an outside edge, so I'm trying to be fairly accurate there. Again, this is the side of the boat, so I'm again trying to be fairly... Ah, there's a little bit of beige in there. Now, it's darker here. Let's shift that slightly orange, but I'm not putting any darks. We're not doing any smoothing. This is pure single value stuff. I'll just leave that white for now. There we go. Still looks terrible, but they're all pretty much the same value at the moment. Okay. Right, let's try the hull of this boat. Now, note we have these lines on here. All this detail stuff we're going to leave to the end, but we do want to get, whoops. Oh, I've got orange in my sky. That's no good, is it? There we go. Right. We want to get this value here. It's slightly darker over here. Actually, no, we want to get this value. This one will probably layer on afterwards. What is that value? If we look at this, it's a blue, but it's lighter than a mid value. So let's go back to our cerulean and do a light wash of cerulean over this hull. Now this will be a different value to what we put down before. Pretty much everything has been the same value, even though they're vastly different colours. This will be a different value. This will be lighter. So So I'm just going to use pure cerulean for this. Let me just test what that looks like. Yeah, okay. So that's kind of what we're going with, and that's the consistency on the palette. Right, now I'm going to start over here. There is a white line there. I might try and just leave a little sliver of white. Paint around these buoys so it doesn't matter horrendously. So this comes out. Now I'm going to wash my brush and do some smoothing here so it looks a little more the value is fading out more smoothly. And this piece down here, you might want to come back at some point and beef that up a bit. That's the shadow side here. Okay, let's put in this underside. Now this is a darker orangey red, so I'm going to use some vermilion and put in some burnt umber for this. It is really quite dark down there. Yeah, but I want it to have some colour in it. I don't just want it to be dark. And all of this, it's just shapes. There's a little bit of bleeding in there, which is fine. I don't mind that. And even that it's on its own is actually showing you some nice contrast between the white of the hull and the dark of the boat. I'm wondering whether, no, I won't put any more darks down here. I think we need to put in the sand first before we start going down into that piece. Okay, well, we're almost done. No, it doesn't look like much so far. While we're here, I think let's put in the sea and the sand. Now the sea is quite dark here. You can make it dark. I think it's nice to have it contrasting with the sides of the boats. So let's have some contrast blue. I'm going to use cobalt and I might just put in a little bit of lemon yellow. I want to make it slightly greener, slightly turquoisey, partly because that's what sea is, and partly because I want it to be almost or more of a complement to my boats. And this will just again be a stripe of colour. So and try and be crisp here because we won't be doing this again. There we go. And there's a couple of sparkles in there, which is fine. And for this side, I'm just going to start here just so I get the side of this boat, because it's the sea that's actually going to define the edge of that hull. There we go. Nice. Lovely bright colours. It's nice to do something with bright colours. We've been doing a lot of things with very subtle, careful mixed colours. So it's good to go nuts. Right, okay. Oh, sand I said. Yeah, let's do some sand. I'm going to go to a slightly bigger brush. This is a 12 round. And let's do some sand. Now again, this is kind of a beige colour. And as before, we're going to start with some yellow ochre. I'm going to mix in some lamp black, or ivory black would be fine. And this it's not to make it darker, it's just to make it less bright. Gosh, why can't I quite see what's going on there? Okay, a bit more. Don't know if that's going to be enough. That is actually pretty much the colour, isn't it? It might just make it slightly brighter, since everything else is bright. Let's go with that. And we have shadows and darks, but it doesn't matter about that. We're going to paint straight through. It's just that little bit there, which I might go around. Alright, I should have used a quill for this. This is not nearly enough paint. Alright, quickly just pick up some more. Just maybe slightly stronger towards the bottom. And while I'm here, I might just put in a little bit of spray to put some texture on that sand. Also a little bit of splatter with something slightly darker. Just to give a bit of, it's not enough, where's my palette knife? Let's do. We'll give us some of those divots in the sand, and I'm hoping it's dry enough it won't disperse completely and disappear. These things always look horrendously dark when you first put them down, but once they dry they become much more subtle. Okay, well, we're not going to do the sky right now. I think we're going to put some more detail in these boats, and we'll see how that looks, and then we'll see what to do with the sky. Now I hope it looks something like this at the moment. I was aiming for lots of very clean blocks of colour, but not a lot of value variation, but in either between the blocks or within each block. We need something very even to start with, because we're going to go in next with darker tones, values, and we won't get the contrast we want. Okay, right, I'm just going to put this on pause and wait for my sand to dry, so I don't drag my sleeve over it. Okay, so our sand is pretty much dry enough anyway. Now we've got our base layer on, and now we're going to start putting in some darker values, not the very dark ones, but just enough so we can show some form on the boats and the cabins, just to start bringing out the three-dimensionality of it. Now I'm going to go to a 12 synthetic. This is my number 12 Escoda Perla, because we want to have some precision here. And we're going to start over here again. I'm going to start putting in still fairly broad areas, but slightly smaller shapes than we did before. So let's start over here. Now, bring this down. I'm going to put in this shadow here, and maybe a little bit of shadow around the back. So this is I know a couple of values darker. So a grey, and we're just going to put a wash around there. Maybe fade it out slightly as it comes around into the light, and that should bring out the shape of that curve. So I'm using my ultramarine and my burnt sienna. Now what? That's going to be too thick. That's going to be too dark. So I'm just tip of my brush in the water. I'm going to use the swatch to see. Just a touch more. Yeah, we've got some colour down there already, so we want it dark enough so it shows up, but not so dark that it's too much of a contrast. So let's just bring this round. Maybe put in, there's a little bit that pokes out here. And it's a slightly smaller shape than we had before. And this is actually dark here, so I'm going to fade this out as it comes around. Okay, and maybe a little bit of dark around the back here. There's these lines. And whenever there are straight lines, break them up just a little bit. They will read much better. I'm going to leave just a little gap before I reach that top bit. Okay, that might have been a bit too dark actually. And there's the side here. So I'm going to put on. And underneath here is also dark, so that's I'm going to put in again as a shape, and just leave some little bits of the previous wash showing through, just so it reads as though there's some stuff going on back there. But it's still a fairly even wash on this. Now let's do the shadow side of this cabin. Now this is really quite dark there, but we're not going to go quite that dark yet. So I'm going to use, it's orange to start with, so I'm going to take it darker with some burnt sienna. And again, just test this. Shouldn't be too dark. And I want to now paint around this life belt. Just leave a little sliver at the top there. This is dark up here. I'm making a bit of a hash of this. And this straight line has to be straight, because this is the edge and we want that to read. There's light on this side and shadow on that side, and bring it down. Okay, that's dark in here. Don't worry about this, we can come in afterwards and put some form on that. While we're doing shadows, we just want to make this side of the roof slightly darker. Now this is an interesting one because it's still quite bright, so I'm going to use my vermilion. I'm just going to add in a little bit of my pinkish red, maybe a little burnt sienna. I want to keep it bright, but I want it to be a slightly different value there. I know there is some subtlety in that. Shadow back there, but that should be enough. I think that should be enough. And I've left this window, this is going to be very dark, I've just left that completely. It's a little bit red up here. We're not doing detail just yet, but it's just a little bit of red. And just some marks and dots. You don't have to be precise with this. Okay. Let's do this line. This is just going to be a single line. Get a very steady hand, and I don't have a very steady hand right now. It's just my cuff is just on the edge of the easel and is annoying me. And as it comes out into the light, I'm going to go back to my pure vermilion. It's really quite a subtle change, this. So this is brighter as it's out in the light. And it stops there. Just put this one down. It's really quite, it's actually quite an important line there, that very subtle value change, darker over there. It does a lot of heavy lifting for the shape. Okay, now I'm going to leave this bit to the end, or at least the end of this stage. Let's start over here and start putting some more darker shapes on this. Let's start with this hull, and you can see there's a shadow coming down here. There's also pieces here, but it basically comes down here and there's a shadow down at the bottom. So let's do that. And again, it's going to be a slightly darker red that we used up there. So I've got vermilion and I think a little bit of burnt sienna and just a touch of your pinkish red. I should shift it. Maybe not too much pinkish red. I should shift it down. And there's a very thin line just under there. That comes down. Comes down here. I know there's more detail in these colours back here. A bit more burnt sienna for this bit back here. And just a stripe across the bottom, and then I'm going to soften that so it looks like it's curved at the bottom. It's not particularly well softened. Clean damp brush, just softening it back there. I know I need to put some colour in there, but I haven't done that yet. And just a very slight piece of colour, just to show that that bit's curving too. So it's a light wash of brownish grey, and then just softening that edge. I'm going to have to put some colour back there. Right, I'm just going to put, there we go. Yes, I think that reads okay. Okay, might need to go a little darker actually, we'll see. Now this piece, we've got two bits. There's very slight value change. The light is hitting these front pieces, and then these bits around the side are very slightly darker. There's also this harder, darker shadow here. So we're going to do these pieces. So this is a very slight value change, much less than this. As we've got some colour down there already, this is just a bit of the grey. You see that? Yeah. Really, really quite watery. I'm just going to put that on. I'm going to leave a stripe. Actually, that's darker there. Okay, and then just I need a light stripe here. And leave a stripe. That's probably got a name, those sticky out bits that go down the sides of boats. I know nothing about boats, so I have no idea. That could be too dark. But it's down now, so well, we'll have to live with it. Should I lift some of that out? No, I'm gonna leave that. This is gonna go quite dark in there, so let's leave that for now. So you can see it's starting to come together. This shadow has worked quite well. We've got the shadow on the side of the cabins and on the roof. We're not looking too bad so far. Okay. Now, what should we do next? This needs to dry. Let's put some of this dark on this green box. Now, we want a darker green than we had before, so I'm going to make up with cobalt and lemon yellow. I wonder if that's going to be dark enough. Let's try this. Actually, let's try this. I know this has got these ridges on it, but we want the whole side of it to also be dark before we put those ridges on. So it's just a slightly darker green. And as we're layering, it will add to the colour. The bottom colour will also play in. Just have a slight value change between the light side and the dark side. Okay. And the side of this roof, again, it's our vermilion with a little bit of burnt sienna. Just slightly darker, just to make this look as though the light is on the front. And it's slightly in shadow around the side. And I think we're starting to see some form come out here. Still think this might have been too dark, but anyway, it's down now. Okay, what next? I think we're going to have to tackle this piece now. This is mainly going to be done through negative painting, and we're just going to look for dark shapes, mix up a grey, so our ultramarine and burnt sienna, not too dark, yeah, I think that's okay, and we can see where the light pieces are. We're just going to paint shapes around them. Now, this is dark here. And I'm leaving bits of the previous layer showing through. It's just almost little squares of colour that go on. I'm not painting things at all. Let's go here. I think in some ways I have an advantage that I've no idea about boats whatsoever. So I've no real idea what I'm painting. Now this dark piece around the side is quite important because this dark is going to define, it's going to bring out the edge of that boat there. So just little squares and triangles of dark. And I'm sitting back, seeing how it's going. Right, now this one, I know there's some red in there too and a bit of yellow. But I'm just looking for the darks and putting in almost little confetti shapes. And as you go through, and I always look back every couple of shapes or so just to see how it's reading. As soon as it reads like, oh yes, there's stuff there, you stop. Right, now this has, I'll put this dark around this cabin. It's a dark piece that comes down. Actually there's some dark at the bottom. I haven't put any windows in. The windows will bring everything out once we get to do those. And I'm going to leave that for now. We will come back in and do some more on that. But for now I'm going to leave it. And let's go over here. So these very dark pieces, let's put those in. These probably won't be dark enough yet. But they will start to bring out what we have. Now there's this ladder here. But I'm not going to paint the ladder, I'm going to paint the gaps inside the ladder. And it's little squares, little triangles. At no point do I attempt to make it look like what I know it is. This is another place where you have faith. I think the first time you do it and it works, you'll probably go, ah, that's how much I need to do, and it's not very much. So is that enough? I think that might be enough. Right, I might stop. Let's just do a little bit around these. Just a little bit around here. I've got to be careful. This is a piece of the boat. I've made this too short, I know, but it is what it is. Alright, I'm just going to put in just a bit of dark up here. There's some stripes across here. I don't think it's ruining it yet. Yeah. And just those little bits of dark, you can see it's giving it some detail, it's giving it some depth. Let's put these darks of the windows in. I've decided. Let's do that. Now, I'm not going to go too dark too early with these. And it's the same kind of idea. I'm not just colouring in the whole thing. I'm putting in shapes, little squares, and triangles and dots and diagonals. I'm going to leave a stripe for that. Yeah, now these windows, as long as they're not too dark, a little bit of dark up there, I don't know what that is, they start bringing the whole thing together. There's a railing here and I am actually just putting little dots around it and leaving it You can go, I mean, you can do so much with opaque white at the end, but if you can, doing it with paint, I think just gives a better effect. Right. Yeah, I think that looks okay. Right, I'm going to stand back and have a look. Yeah, I'm quietly confident. That is always dangerous. Right, and while we're here, right now I'm just looking for darker areas that are slightly darker than the ones we put in originally, and just dabbing in a bit of colour, or a bit of dark, and being quite broad with it, leaving some sparkles. Probably need a little bit of colour on that so it gives it some shape. Yeah, there's the railings. I'm not going to do the railings yet. Okay, so let's move back and do this cabin now. Now, we put this shadow in. That's the light, that's the shadow. There's darker pieces underneath, so let's put these darker pieces in. I may start to just leave little areas where the railings go. I don't know if I can. That might not work. But anyway, I'm leaving gaps. So it makes it look dark there. We're going to need a line across here, aren't we? And there's this window here. Which is very dark. And it's just a line down there. And some lines just to bring out the shadows inside the cabin. Are they called cabins? I'm calling them cabins. This dark piece up here. And this only works because we limited our values in our first layer. And then we went slightly darker for the broad shadow areas. And now this bit, getting even darker. Alright, now it's got blue in, but I'm being a bit lazy. Just where I see a little bit of dark, I put a dot. And you kind of just have to trust that if your dots are in the right place, they will read as what it is. Right, there's a dark one in here. It's just a bit of shadow down the side there. And it's quite dark back here, actually. If that's going to ruin it. we're still not at the stage where it should be looking more form-like, but it shouldn't be looking finished. When we come in and we do all the masts and the lines and the very crisp shadows, it will bring everything together amazingly well. Right, I'm just going to put in that post, I think. I feel guilty about not doing that very well. Now it's got some shadow on it, but I can't put that in until it's dry now. And a little bit of blue. Just a little bit of blue stripe here. And just where it's out in the light, just make it slightly lighter. Okay, right, now this line here, I think we need something. You need a very steady hand. I'm just putting a line and just leaving a very tiny bit of white, not white, but at least paper, just to show the edge. I'm going to put a couple of things here. This comes out. And just a bit of shadow underneath these rungs. Yeah, that might need a bit of attention later. Okay, right, actually talking of rungs, let's put in some of these railings whilst we're over here. So, again, it's my pointy synthetic, a light grey, and a broken line. These are actually light in the photo. I'm going to make them slightly darker. This one comes across here. Like so. Right, so what are we looking like? I don't know if this is a disaster or not yet. It's not looking too bad. Now, I think we have to put these buoys in. I think we have to put those in. We'll put these in and then we're going to do the sky. We need to put the sky in before we put in the masts. So let's do that. And these give a nice pop of colour. So this is, I've got colour down there, this is basically cadmium orange. You can mix up an orange. I'm not putting any shadows on these yet. It's just pure colour. I will come back in and put their shadows on. And it's this one. And let's do a yellow one. They'll look a bit odd because they won't have any shadows giving us information as to where they actually sit on the boat. I know these are actually, they have a lighter piece here. I'm kind of ignoring that because I want them to be pops of colour on the painting that breaks up the hull. So I'm ignoring that. Right. And some redder ones. use my orangey red. I'm going to give it just a little hint of pinkish red just to make them slightly pinker. I'm not being particularly careful with these actually. There we go. And they look pasted on at the moment because they have no shadows, but they're the right colour. Let's just have another little look at this life belt. It does have some shadow on it. The little white stripes around the edges we'll put in with opaque white. We could have left white paper, but I don't think I have the patience for that right now. Right, just little dots and stripes. I'm just going to smooth that out slightly because it is a round thing. I might have lost that a little. Yeah, I think I've lost that a little. I'd like to put some more dark in there, but it's wet now, so I can't. Okay. Now, sky. Let's put some sky in. This is a very blue sky. And I'm gonna draw back from doing that. I'm gonna use cerulean mostly. I think it will be pure cerulean. Cobalt would be fine. I like cerulean because it granulates so well. I'm going to use cerulean and put in rough areas of blue and leave some white paper so it looks like clouds. And I might keep the blue out of, I might keep the blue towards the top of the paper so we get a fair amount of contrast for our masts. Let's see how this goes anyway. I'm using my quill for this. Right, I'm washing up my brush. Cleaned up brush. Hopefully it's not drying too quickly. I just want to put a bit of liveliness in the sky. Bring it down a little. Keeping out of the boat pieces. I don't want to smudge anything. There's a tiny bit of colour in that still, so I'm just bringing that down. There's that white piece there. Actually, I could have pulled a bit of blue down there, but actually I think that colour, it just has enough in it. To give us a bit of interest in there. Right, okay. I've got a couple of blossoms, I don't mind those. I kind of like them. Okay, maybe just a little bit in here. Not quite what on there. Right, let me just I have to invent something to go over there. Right, okay. So the sky. Now I'm looking at it and thinking, now what do you need? What do we do next? And what I want to do next is try and tie these boats to the ground. They're looking as though they're kind of floating on the sand there, and we're gonna do that by putting in shadows. Now I'm gonna shadow these again, probably with a brownish grey, so ultramarine and burnt sienna. And it's not going to be nearly dark enough. They are quite intense down there. So, but they are quite, also quite crisp. I think part of this is boat actually, and part of it is shadow. Yeah, you see, that helps enormously, doesn't it? Right, let's put this one in back here. This is part of the boat. I might need a few more darks put back in. Right, go under here. It finishes just there. Yeah, it's not dark enough, I don't think. It comes out kind of bobbly because it's on the sand. Yeah, that did it a power of good. Not sure whether it's dark enough, but smooth that top edge. I want a hard edge there. Right. Okay. Now we're getting close, actually. I'm getting close. Oh, this buoy didn't go in, did it? Did not go in. We're getting to the point where I'm looking at it and thinking, okay, we're almost at the point where the masts go in. Let's put in some shadows. Let's put in some shadows on this hull. Now this is a crucial piece, and we have to be very careful we do not screw up at all. I think I say this in every painting. Right. I want to put in some of these little lines in there that show the wood on the boat. I also want to put in this shadow, and also the shadow that is down. It's the shadow from this cable. Maybe, well, we will see. That might be enough. Okay, I'm going to use my pointy synthetic. Now we have some colour on there, but we want more. But we have to be very careful. It's not too dark. It's very easy to go too dark on this. So I've got some cerulean there, or some dilute cobalt. Be good. All right. Now let's put in some lines. They kind of taper, don't they? And again, I'm kind of breaking them up. Ah, they look very, very dark on the screen. Oh no. I'm putting them back. now back here we go into shadow. And I'm hoping that's going to dry a lot lighter. And this might be. There's the shadow underneath as well. It's I don't know if that worked. I think I might have got away with that. Might have done. The other one is this shadow here. Right. That is very choppy because as it goes down the boards, it's just staggered a little. I'm hoping that's okay. Right, just going to put a little more colour here. It's just a slight line. There's also lines down the other side. Nah, I don't know if I've got away with that. While I'm here, just going to put a bit of shadow on these. These buoys, just to make them look as though they're sitting on the side of the boat. Just looking at the shadow, and so that's a little bit of burnt sienna on there. This one will just have a little bit of darker red with a little bit of burnt sienna in it. Oh, I want to do that. Again, burnt, that's not going to be dry. And a little bit of yellow ochre, I think, for this yellow one. Not sure that's going to. Yeah, I know there's some reflected light in there, but I'm not going to do that. Okay. Well, let's have a look. We're getting there, slowly. We're getting there. Let's put some masts in. Now, masts. You don't want these to be black. I know they look very dark, but you really don't want them to be overly, yeah, it's kind of a mid-grey even. If they're too light, we can always go in and darken them. And you have to be, that doesn't work for a start, she said, quite, actually I'm going to take some of the water off that. I'm doing it in little fits and starts. There we go. If you can do them faster, please do, but I find it easier just to do little pieces. You could even maybe use the side of a flat brush for this. But I do find the sort of the dotted line approach works well. So we come down here, it gets bigger. Yeah, and that's not black at all, that's really quite, it's almost pretty much a mid-grey. Some little dots where I can see some stuff going on. I'm not going to put in, I could put in that one. No, okay. Try and keep them thin. It is just tickling the paper. Right, so you up here. These twiddly bits. And that one hasn't got a middle twiddly bit. Just a few dots here and there will suggest an awful lot of stuff. Hey. Try and keep it straight. Straight-ish. Anyway, that didn't look good. I think we might get away with this because there's stuff around it. I kind of enjoy this bit, I have to say. Just going down. When I see a mast, I put it in. Short little lines. Leave some gaps. And if you can steady your hand with your little finger on the paper, that always helps. That always helps. There's some bits and bobs. These little bits that stick up on the roof are always good. Right, now that comes across here. You don't have to put in every single mast, by the way. It can start to look a bit busy. Of course, boat aficionados will probably complain, but they can paint their own boats. Right, now and just putting in some bits and pieces where I see it. Just little dabs of dark. A bit more paint. Ding, ding, ding. Yeah. Right, just a smidgen more water. Just gonna, there's a little bit more detail on this one I want to put in, I think. That's going to be too dark. I don't know if you can see on the screen what I'm doing. Little dots. Yeah, okay. It'll be okay. Now these ones, got these white pieces in here, but we need these sticks. I've no idea what these things are. Not going to put the flags in yet. And actually they go behind that, okay. Tempted to put them in front of it, just to give it a bit more interest, but I won't. And I think I do need some diagonals out here, and this is going to be awkward because my palette's in the way. try not to mess up. Okay, good. Yeah, do try and keep them straight. It's straight and very delicate and not continuous lines. Let's put in a bit more dark here. I think I'm maybe getting to the point where I'm doing too much. Okay, I think that's enough for that side. Let's do finish off over here. Oops. And if I see something that looks vaguely rectangular, I just paint it as a little rectangle. And I know these things are white up here, but we might put a little touch of white on afterwards. Some little stuff poking up. Bits and bobs, boat stuff. Oh, there's another railing around here, isn't there? And just some other bits. There's some little lines and things, and there's that shadow. As you start to complete this, you start to see bald patches that you've forgotten. There's a shadow in here that I haven't put in. And that should go. Right. There's actually an orange line along here, which I'm not going to do. I'm hoping I'm not doing too much. Alright, now out here, this comes down, whoops. So, and a little bit of blue on that just to bring out the shadow. It's white and I'm putting blue on the shadow side. This little piece, I've no idea what this is. I call them mushrooms, but I'm pretty sure there's a technical name for them. Let's put in some shadows, put these ridges on this green box. And these are just a bit of grey in vertical lines. I'm not really trying to render it as to what it is. I don't think it really matters. Just a bit of shadow under there to give it a bit of form. Bit of shadow under the bottom. I don't know what this, can I put this into something? It's probably not the right thing to do, but anyway. Right, okay, now let's have a stand back and see. I think we're very close. I just about got away with that shadow. Just want to put a bit more form on these. I would call them boys, but I've been trained to call them buoys. Let's just put a bit of dark around there. Yep, and this is just a bit of burnt sienna, not particularly dark burnt sienna. Okay, we're very close. Oh, there's a bit of blue on this one too. Just a bit of shadow, just to give things a bit of form. Each individual one doesn't affect things, but they do, in aggregate, darkening down these windows slightly. I think they're slightly too aggressive. Right, now we're coming to the final touches. Oh, let's put this thing in. This is orange. Because we have a shadow, but no cable. Okay, the cable comes in. Okay. It's a bit too wide down there. And now this is, I'm getting to the point where I'm looking around and I'm looking for things to do. Now this is always dangerous because you will always find things to do and then you ruin everything. So I'm just looking around for little bits of dark that I've missed, that I can see on the photo that I can't see on the painting. And oh, there's this one in here. Yeah. I'd darken that up a bit. There we go. Put in those red flags. Right, now this is vermilion and a little bit of permanent rose. And these are just little marks. No detail in here. But I am trying to join them together. There we go. And a little bit of colour on the side. Just to put some shadows on these. Just bring out the form slightly. Right. I think I'm very close to calling it a day. There's probably other things I will see later, but a couple of things. Let's put on a black. I think black will be fine for this. I'll put the lettering on in a minute in opaque white. Just a black rectangle. Of course I messed that up. Idiot. I don't even know if I can fix that. And then there's this one down here. I'm just going to let that dry and get the opaque white out. Try and pick up that. I'm just going to make a mess of that. Okay. Well, we're very, very close. Yeah, there's probably some other shadows maybe to put on. Maybe. Right, I'm gonna, no, oh, there's this one here. I should put something on this. Okay, let's get some opaque white out. Now when I'm doing letters, I kind of break them up so they look like letters, but you can't actually read them. Does that dry it? No. I'm going to try it anyway. So I put little marks on that look like letters and numbers. But they don't actually read as anything. If it's readable, our eyes will want to read it and they won't see anything else. There we go. I should have waited for that to dry, but I think that's fine. Now, any bits of opaque white, don't want anything anywhere else. A little bit under here. Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure I do need anything anywhere else. I'm tempted just to start dibby-dabbying around, but I suspect that would be a bad idea. Okay, I think I'm done. Phew. Hour and a half. That was quite a long one. I thought it was going to go quickly at the beginning, but it didn't in the end. I keep seeing other bits I could do, which I'm not going to do. Okay, well, phew, that was quite a session. I hope it was good for people. I hope it was useful. Okay, see you next time.